Meritocracy. The meritocracy means that people should succeed based on their talent, their ability, and their hard work. And in theory, this sounds like a good idea. And in fact, the school system is built around the idea of a meritocracy. The good students go to the best universities, and then after they graduate, they will get the very best jobs. That's the idea. But what I will show you today is that there are actually lots of problems with the meritocracy. And what I'll also show you is that, in fact, this idea is actually destroying American society. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you why America has the world's most complicated admission system. Okay, so in China, when you apply to university, you take the Gaokao, you take an examination, and then based on your test score, you get into university. And this is a system that most countries use. Only in America is a system that's complicated. Your transcript matters, but so does your standardized test scores, the SAT, the TOEFL. So does your extracurriculars. So does teacher recommendation letters. And so does essays in which you have to say to America, I'm a really good person. Why does it matter if you're a good person? Okay, so it's the world's most complicated admission system. So what I'll do first is explain to you why we have this system. Okay, so we start off in England in the 1600s. And at this time in history in England, there's a major conflict between religious belief and the king. Okay, the king is head of the Anglican Church, which is the official church of England. And there's no difference between the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church. The only difference is in the Catholic Church, the head is the Pope. In the Anglican Church, the head is the King of England. That's the only difference. In terms of rituals, in terms of belief, it's the same. Now, there are people called Protestants who believe there should be no Pope, there should be no king. You should, as an individual, be able to access God directly. And you do that by reading the Bible. So, at this time in history, there's a major conflict between the Protestants, the Puritans, or the dissenters, and the king. And it leads to wars, basically. And so the solution is, the king says to the dissenters, hey, there's this new place called America. It's far away. Go there, guys, and leave me alone. Okay, so the dissenters go as pilgrims to America to build their own theocracy, what they believe to be the New Jerusalem, or paradise on earth, heaven on earth. Now, one core belief of the Protestants is you must read the Bible in order to understand the mind of God. Therefore, education, literacy, learning, it is the divine imperative. And that's why they established Harvard, okay? Harvard was a school designed to train people into the religion, called ministers, in order to study the Bible, in order to spread the truth of the Bible. Now, Harvard then would encourage the development of other universities, Yale, Princeton, okay? And collectively, they would be known as the Ivy League. Okay? So this is how the Ivy League started, because America was founded as a religious colony, and everyone needed to read the Bible, so they needed places to study the Bible, and so they founded Harvard, and then Yale, and then Princeton. Okay? But over time, as America became more wealthy, it became also less religious. And so the Ivy League became social clubs. And what I mean by that is, these were just places where the rich of America went to become friends. Okay? It was to build cohesion, right? And remember, we discussed the idea of cohesion, where if you commit transgression, you become more cohesive. So these guys did not study. They drank, they dressed up like girls, they had wild parties, they played football, they took risks. Okay? And they became good friends, and they went on to become the leaders of America. As America became much more diverse, much bigger, and much more wealthy, it recognized that it needed to educate its population. And so it started state schools, okay? State schools. What we call A&M. Okay, you may have heard the term Texas A&M, okay? It means Texas Agricultural and Mechanical. The reason why was these schools were built to train farmers, engineers, and soldiers, okay? Tradespeople, in order to help grow the American economy. Now, and this system was extremely successful. America was able to industrialize really, really quickly. And most people went to these schools. Only the rich would go to the Ivy League because they were country clubs or social clubs. Over time, America, as it began to industrialize more and more, it recognized that it needed science and technology. So it basically copied the best universities in Germany. And Germany was at this time the main center of science and technology in the world. And so they built something called research universities. Okay? And a couple of the first research universities were Chicago University, the University of Chicago, and Johns Hopkins. Okay? So in the about 1900, you have this system, okay, of state schools where most people went. If you're a poor person, you go to learn a trade, and then you go and get a good job and make good money. If you wanted to be a professor or scientist, you went to these research universities. If you were rich, you went to these social clubs called the Ivy League. And quite honestly, it was a really good system. And America should have stayed with this system. But what happened was, who's unhappy now about the system? These guys, right? Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, because if you think about it, over time, they become less and less relevant. Because just because you're rich doesn't mean you're smart. All the smart people are going to Chicago and Johns Hopkins. And so over time, we can expect Chicago and Johns Hopkins to overtake the Ivy League. Okay? And that's why Harvard decided to institute scholarship programs. So it wanted more smart people into it wanted to welcome more smart people into its campus, okay? And this created something called the SAT. Okay, this is the origin of the SAT. The SAT was founded as a scholarship program to identify the best and brightest students from all over America so that they could come to Harvard and help Harvard be the best university in the world, okay? But now who's angry about the system? Harvard's not happy that the best students are going to Chicago and Johns Hopkins. So they quit the SAT. And now the best students are coming to Harvard. Now who's unhappy? The rich kids, right? Okay, the alumni, the legacies. Because before, their kids could just go to Harvard and have a great time. Now it's hard for them to get in, they have to take a test, and also they're in class with smarter people. Okay? So now Harvard has a problem. On one hand, it wants the best students in America, but on the other hand, it still wants to maintain good relations with its alumni. So that's why it created a new system, okay? In this new system, grades are not the only factor. Test scores are not the only factor. Now it's focused on holistic. Holistic, okay? The new word is holistic, specifically character. Just being smart is not good enough. You have to be a good person. You have to be a strong and brave and virtuous person, okay? So they have a new concept called character. But this word was created to basically keep Jews out, okay? Because Jews are really smart, but Jews like to read books, so they're not good at sports. And so, that's not good. We need people who are manly, who are strong, who are brave. We need white people, okay? So they developed this holistic system. And that's why we have the system that we have today, where it's not just test scores, it's essays, it's transcript, it's teacher recommendations, because they want to identify the Jews and keep them out, okay? Today, we have the system to identify both the Jews and the Asians, keep them out. Yes?
They would even identify for your household. Like they would ask for your profile.
Exactly. So all the information that they're looking at today is to identify your ethnicity, your, they want to keep, they basically want to keep Asians out of Harvard, okay? It's that simple, all right? But I'll explain more as we go along, okay? All right? So the purpose of all these changes is to ensure that Harvard remains the institution of power in America. Does it make sense? Harvard's not interested in academics, it's interested in power. Therefore, it must ensure that the people who come to Harvard are the ones who are most likely to succeed. And that's why it doesn't want all Asians. It wants a mix of students, okay? But I'll explain this later on. Okay, now in this new system, there are two key concepts. The first key concept is the idea of secrecy. Okay? Secrecy just means like, I'll never tell you why I let you in or why I didn't let you in. I don't have to, okay? The other is the idea of discretion. Discretion means that I can choose to let in for no reason. Okay? So in China, if you get a really high score on the Gaokao, Beida or Tsinghua has to let you in. Not in America. You could be the best student in the world. They don't care. If they don't like you, they'll just say, we don't want you. Okay? They have their own institutional reasons to let you in, and they'll never tell you. All right? And the system was created to ensure that Harvard is able to recruit the best students in the world. But what's important for us to remember is, from Harvard's perspective, best just means the most likely to succeed, not necessarily the best academically oriented student, not the smartest student, okay? So let's run a thought experiment, okay? Let's just say that you are a Harvard admissions officer, and you're presented with 4 students, okay? You're Harvard, the best university in the world. Okay, and I give you 4 students. And you can only let in 1 student, okay? You tell me who you let in, and I'll tell you if you're a good admissions officer or not, okay? Okay, the first is the best math genius from China, okay? Everyone's like, no. All right. Second is the best basketball player in the world, okay? Basketball player in America, okay? Okay. The third is the best student in the world. And the fourth is 3 generations of Harvard, okay? So your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather went to Harvard. Who do you let in? You guys know the system. Exactly, okay? You don't even think about it, like I let in number 4, okay? Because you know that in the world, he is the most likely to succeed. You're not interested in educating smart people. All you want to do is graduate rich people. Okay? So let's just say this guy doesn't exist. Then who do you let in? Exactly. Yep. This guy, okay? Definitely not this guy, okay? Definitely not the math genius from China, because you know that he's probably just going to end up as a math teacher. Right? Math professor. We don't want that. Okay? We don't want professors, we don't want lawyers, we don't want doctors. We want people who will be head of a company. We want people who will become a famous rock star. We want people who will become president of the United States. That's what we want, okay? And so either one of these 2 is fine. No, okay? But we want these guys to apply because that helps us look better, right? We want people to apply so we can reject them so that our metrics look better, okay? Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? That's how the system works.